New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Hello, hi, it's me, yes, Bonnie Gonzalez, your doula for grief. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever time you're watching. Just want to say welcome. I am a grief coach, a registered nurse, a science of mind practitioner, and a soul collage facilitator. Most importantly, I'm a human on the planet, right here with you right now, moving through this beautiful thing called life. So thank you for joining me. And I just want to say, I can assure you that you have come to the right place today to start your journey of befriending grief. And my mission is to continue to move the needle on bringing grief out of the shadows of our lives and into our daily lives, into our conversations. Grief is vital. Grief is a part of the human experience. And I want to say that loss is what we experience, and grief is what we feel. And we experience a myriad of losses in so many different ways. Usually when someone thinks of grief, the first thing they go to is death. And yes, there is no bigger trauma. I call it the mother of all losses is death. So yes, giving that its rightful place and respect. But also realizing that loss of hopes and dreams, we have divorce, we have relationships that end, that's a loss. Also lifestyle changes. I 2 years ago moved to another country, left what I loved in the US, and that was a loss, navigating that, surgeries, loss of aging, birth of a baby, just so many different losses. And so wanting you to know that grief is not just caused by death. So just a loss. Loss is what we say, loss of hopes and dreams. So we are here to really just discuss that. How do we get in touch with those emotions that come about from those losses, that grief? Because grief needs to be heard. Grief needs to be shared, and grief needs validation. And what I do want to say about grief is that grief's superpower, its superpower is healing. It is exactly what gets us to the other side of the grief. Because so many times I hear, I just want to be over this grief. I just want to be over this. And to be over it, and not even over it, but to accept it, embrace it, incorporate it into ourselves, we need to just move through it. Just move through it. And that's how we get to the other side, by just walking straight through. So just want you to know that is the reason I'm here to encourage to encourage you, to encourage others to really discuss grief. And so I want to I welcome you into the conversation. Just drop a comment or a question in the comment box, and let's do this grief. Let's do grief, because grief is transformative. Grief is transformative. If you think about anyone that you know that has had a loss and has been in grief, if you think about how they were, say, this time last year, and to where they are now, it's almost like a totally different person with a different perspective and having had their own personal growth. So with that knowing, that's why it's so important that we befriend it and embrace it. And so this week, I am super, super excited to have this topic. My topic today is prosperity, the gift born from grief. And there is no one better qualified with me today to discuss this. I've had just wonderful guests, just fantastic guests, and today is no exception. If anything, over the top, just the perfect guest to be here with us. And that is Reverend Jim Webb. Reverend Webb is a new host here on New Thought Media Network. He has his show on Sunday night, 6 p.m. on Mountain Time. And the title of his show is The Miracle of Prosperity. And so with that, let me just tell you just a tidbit about Reverend Webb. He is an accomplished spiritual teacher, author, intuitive, channel, and coach. He currently serves as the senior minister at the Tacoma Park Chapel. Reverend Webb also served on the faculty of the Ayala Van Zant's Inner Visions Institute for Spiritual Development and has taught at the New Seminary. He speaks and teaches workshops nationally in conjunction with his books, The Soul of Prosperity, Pathways to Inner Peace, The Keys to Enlightened Living. Thank you, Joe, for putting those copies up there. Keys to Enlightened Living. And the newest release is The Soul of Prosperity. His teachings and counseling methods, his wisdom, coaching, and insights can help you to overcome blockages and achieve the happiness that you deserve, that you're so worthy of. So please welcome Reverend Jim Webb to our program today. Welcome, Reverend Webb. How are you there in Maryland, correct?
Yes. Maryland, outside of Washington, D.C.
Yes. I cut my eye teeth in PG County.
Yes.
So I'm having a little reminiscing going on in my head about Maryland, the DC area. So
Yes.
Thank you for saying yes today, Reverend Webb. Thank you for saying yes. I feel that your message is so valuable, so timely. So before we delve into our topic, I just wanted to ask you to share a little bit about you, how you acquired such deep wisdom and knowledge around the subject of prosperity.
All right. I'd be happy to. My original quest wasn't to teach prosperity.
Mm-hmm.
My original quest wasn't even to become a minister. My original quest had nothing to do with prosperity, ministry, or spirituality.
Mm.
My original quest was a quest of healing.
Mm. Yes.
I originally, when I was about 13, actually 14, I had what we now know to be an out-of-body experience.
Ooh.
Yeah, you see, I was born in a pretty rough neighborhood,
And where
and
were you?
I
Where?
was born in one of those little small steel mill coal mining towns outside of Pittsburgh in western Pennsylvania.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
And I was beaten up by some kids, uh,
Hmm.
and to the point where I was unconscious for an extended period of time. And as a result of that, only later in life did I realize what happened then. When I came back, I would have these flying dreams and
Mm-hmm.
I would know stuff. For example, I hadn't had French class yet, but one of the teachers put coup d'etat on the board and said, "What does it mean?" And I heard someone say, "Stroke of state." So I said, "Stroke of state." And she said, "How did you know that?" And I'm like, "I don't know." But
Wow.
the point of that is that I actually had what we now know to be an out of body experience where I talked
Mm-hmm.
to my angels, guides, and teachers, and I said, "This is too hard. I don't want to do this.
Right.
I can't do this." And they wouldn't make me go back because I didn't want to, but I
Mm.
heard my mother crying next to my bed, and I went back. And when I went back, they said, "We'll leave the windows and doors open."
Mm-hmm.
And so when I went back, I looked at everything I could get my hands on. At that point in the library, they were still using the Dewey Decimal System, and there was a section called the occult. And I
Uh,
looked, yes, I found everything I could read. And when I was reading this stuff, it was like, I know this, I know this, I know this, because it wasn't reading it to learn it. It was reading it to remind me of the truth that was already in me that had been exposed by my own body experience. So that was the beginning of my journey, and I thought that was it. So I kind of
right.
put that on the back burner, and I went to the Wharton School, and I went and got an MBA, and I wound up being a vice president of an IT company, and I
Mm.
was miserable inside.
Mm.
I was miserable inside because I hadn't dealt with the grief, the pain, the shame, the self doubt, the self hatred of my earlier life and my traumas.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. Yes.
And I had to find a way to heal. So my path to prosperity was a path of healing so I wouldn't die again.
Mm-hmm.
That was my path. I didn't intend to be a minister. I didn't intend to be a coach. I didn't intend to be anything other than a master of the universe from the Wharton School. But
Mm.
Spirit had another idea, and my
Right.
life had a different purpose.
Mm. Oh, thank you for sharing that story. There was something. I mean, that's really heartbreaking. Such a tragic event. And as you said, you never got to really examine that. You just moved forward with life.
Yes.
And was there anyone that you feel you could have talked to about that, or that just wasn't the way life was done at that time?
That wasn't the way life was done at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went through an intense period of self study. And I studied Eastern religions. I studied what was then the occult. I studied uh, what was then, this was before New Thought, but what was, for example, the Seth books on the nature of
Oh,
reality, all of those, remember those?
yes, I do. Yes, yes.
And I integrated that into my consciousness on an intellectual level. But
Mm-hmm.
later in life, that all of that was triggered on the heart level. You know, that longest journey from the head to the heart?
Now we had to.
When I was in my late 20s and I had everything anybody could imagine, a beautiful home in Upper Montclair overlooking the New York skyline, a wonderful job, and plenty of money and resources and status and titles and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then my life fell apart because my inner life
Yes.
hadn't received the tending and the healing necessary.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
that's when I went on this quest for the deeper self healing to take all that knowledge and bring it from the head to the heart.
Mm-hmm.
And on that journey, I conducted a pathway to peace and prosperity without intending to. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when I realized it
Yes.
was important to share this with others as well.
Ah, wonderful. Yes. And before we move into that, I can't. I'm excited to hear that and share with you the prosperity aspect. But I did want to just ask, was there a breaking point, a point when you were in your corporate America career that said, I can't do this anymore? Or what was your breaking? I don't want to call it breaking point. What was the turning point? What was the moment that the light bulb went off to say something
It was
different?
it was very gradual. What happened is the two aspects of my life dovetailed, meaning that as I integrated more spiritual truth into my life, I integrated that spiritual truth into my business as well. And so my business actually did very well because, for example, what I would do the lesson that I would teach in a sermon on Sunday, I would teach to my sales organization. On Monday, I would just take out the God stuff.
Right. Oh, I love that. Yes. Well, take out the G word, isn't that?
Yes, exactly, exactly. And so the two actually dovetailed, and they
Mhm.
dovetailed in several ways. They dovetailed to the point where one was indistinguishable from the other, but they also dovetailed in that I had a platform of, let's call it, financial comfort that
Mhm.
enabled me to simply make the switch in a very easy and effortless way.
Yes.
And that is very important. You brought up a book when we chatted before. Mystics have to pay the bills too.
Oh, yes. Mystics have to pay bills to say yes.
Yes,
That financial aspect is needed. Is needed.
exactly. And the other thing is, we sometimes as mystics, we want to draw this big, strong Maginot line or this line of demarcation between that which is secular and that which is spiritual, and that which is spiritual is spiritual, and that which is secular is profane. And there is spirit, God intention, God light in everything, and there are lessons to be learned everywhere. So if we are cutting off an aspect of our the way that we can learn our lessons, heal, or channels for our learning, our healing, or our prosperity,
Mm-hmm.
then we are cutting off an aspect of our good. And why do that?
Yes. Hmm. I love what you're saying, and I don't want to interrupt or cut you off, but it feels like releasing the judgment. That's what I'm hearing as I'm listening to you speaking
Yes,
on this. It's like, wow, just release the judgment. Accept.
exactly. Exactly. A Course in Miracles says, I think it's lesson 193. It says, all things are lessons God would have me learn.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And then another lesson, I believe it's 154, says, if you only knew that all things past, present, and to be were gently planned by the one that would lead you to your good, which is in parallel to all things work together for the good.
Mm-hmm.
And when we understand that there is actually a conspiracy for our good and that everything is a part of this plan, judge
Mm-hmm.
nothing, judge no part of it. And there's another lesson, 134, I will not judge anything that occurs. And all these lessons together say everything is part of your spiritual curriculum. Your soul decided on the spiritual curriculum for you to learn the lessons, have the teachings, and share the light developed as a result. So
Yeah.
don't judge any of it. It's all right.
Yeah.
And and that I guess gets us back to grief. Because
Yeah.
grief is a part of that too. And moving through it, not buying a condo in it.
Yes. Well, well said.
A very wise lady taught me that one.
Well, this wise lady. Oh, it may not be me. It may be someone else.
It was you.
No, I love what you're saying because it brings me to that one that suffering is when we don't accept what is. That it's like a self-imposed suffering by
Yes.
not accepting what is. That once we accept, then we're on that path of moving forward. But
Yes.
I'm going to allow you to continue, Reverend Webb, with what you were saying about grief, to
Yes.
bring those emotions into play, into. into the dialogue conversation today.
Yes, exactly. Our task, our ultimate task, is to move forward and have a closer walk with the divine to the point where we realize that us and the divine are indistinguishable because we are the divine and the divine lives within us. And on that journey, we move through anything unlike that truth. So when we move through something that triggers our grief, it is to propel us forward. That grief is jet fuel. It is a catalyst for our growth. It is a catalyst for our healing. And it moves us, as the old folks said, on a closer walk with thee. It moves us closer to that sense of oneness that is truth and away from this idea that we are separated from love, God, light, or truth. And so grief is a very important aspect of that. Or any emotion, unlike love, is a guidepost to our growth that we could get to a fuller, deeper, higher love. So
Yes.
it's not something to be run away from. It's not something to be shunned. It's not something to be judged. It's a tool to be used.
And that is wonderful to hear you say that, because my feeling and with my experience of being with people, that we're living in a culture that wants to keep us, what is that, positive thinking. And there's nothing wrong with positive thinking.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with that. But on the other end of that, if you don't express what's inside,
Yes.
that can keep you in grief forever if
Yes.
you don't lean into it. I call it leaning into those uncomfortable feelings.
Yes. Yes.
And
There's a phrase in our culture now called toxic positivity that
yeah,
tends to ignore the feelings that we are having, to invalidate the feelings that we are having, to downplay the feelings that we are having. And let me share with you from my experience and from what I've learned as it relates to spiritual teaching. When we ignore, downplay, or invalidate those feelings, they still live within us
they
and they
are.
still create their outer reflection. But they do so in a way that those outer reflections come to us unbidden, unwanted, and in more and more destructive ways until we recognize what's going on out there is a
Yes.
reflection of what's going on in here. And if you haven't dealt with it in here, you'll deal with it out there. And when you deal with it out there, it's 10 times more intense, damaging, or destructive than dealing with it in here.
Wow, wow. Well said. Well said. I'm just going to take a moment to just read a couple comments that have come in.
Okay.
And there was, from Tina Norton. It's hi. So, hello, Tina. Thank you for joining us today. And then we have Cheryl Miller. She says, I love this conversation. I just listened to the interview regarding grief on July 15th. So good. Thank you, Cheryl, for that confirmation.
Yes.
And she said, oh, this is dovetailing just on what you said, Reverend Webb. She says, yes, everything is a conspiracy for my good, accepting what is. Thank you, Cheryl. I'm going to read that part again. It's like, yes, everything is a conspiracy for my good. And I'm reading it again because sometimes when it's happening, I don't know, it doesn't always feel good. So thank you for those comments. Thank you so much. Reverend Webb, you were saying that there was a part in your new book that deals with emotional release.
Yes.
And
Exactly.
and I was hoping maybe we could share some of that with our listeners. But I'm thinking before we do that, maybe we should just take a little break. And wow, so much has been said. Just kind of breathing in what you've said. And one more comment. Grateful for you. Such important expressions and experience. So we will take a break. and come back and really delve more into how that prosperity is a gift born from grief with Reverend Webb. So we'll be back in a minute.
New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
It's Bonnie. Welcome back to our program today on prosperity, a gift born from grief, with my special guest, Reverend Webb. And I promised before we went to break that we would talk about emotional releasing. But before I do that, Reverend Webb, I shared with you that usually when I hear the word prosperity, first thing I think of is money. But I know that it's bigger, and I'm going to ask you to speak to that, to share your thoughts on that.
Oh, absolutely. Most people think that prosperity is simply money and stuff. But money and stuff is simply one of many outgrowths of prosperity, and prosperity begins within. Prosperity is an inner sense of peace, self-confidence, connection with a source bigger, more powerful, and more divine than our human egos. And in that connection, we find a peace, a capacity for joy, and it shows up in our world as harmonious relationships, harmonious family relationships, work, as I often say from Florence Scovel Shinn, a wonderful job with wonderful pay where you produce a wonderful service in a wonderful way. Professional fulfillment, a fulfilling lifestyle where you have a comfortable life, where you move through life comfortably and joyfully, and plenty of resources. And that's not just money, but it's resources such as support in your life, resources that make your life easy to navigate. And all of that is an aspect of prosperity. And that's God's idea. God wills for us our prosperity. Our erroneous consciousness of guilt believes that we must struggle and suffer and put roadblocks in our way. And so prosperity begins within, with that sense of oneness with the source that shows up in our outer world as the joy and the good that the source wills for us. For when we exemplify and embody the good, the light, and the love of the source, we invite others to do the same. And that's why God has an investment in our prosperity.
Oh, I love that. An investment in our prosperity. I really am just resonating to that God has an investment in our prosperity. And that, for me, Reverend Webb, when I hear that, it allows me to really feel into that idea that I am not alone, that I'm not trying to do this alone. There's so many people that I speak feel that they are alone. So that kind of a reminder is really, really, truly, truly helpful.
Absolutely. A Course in Miracles lessons 101 through 103 say, God's will for me is perfect happiness. and I agree with God's will for me. Now, the first part we find hard to believe if we've had an experience of God as apart from us, judgmental, vengeful, and punitive. And if we and so we can't believe that God's will for us is perfect happiness, because that's not the God we were introduced to at age 12.
Yes. And do you feel we're moving away from that type of teaching?
I believe that we are. I believe that we are. And as we move away from that type of teaching, we can move more towards our own personal, individual experience of God.
Thank you.
For
Thank
when you experience God yourself, personally, individually, you experience love. You experience peace. You experience protection. You experience provision. You experience direction. You experience harmony. You experience flow. You experience grace. You experience good. And when you experience all of that as God, it crowds out any old ideas you had of God as apart from you, and vengeful, punitive, and judgmental of you.
Right. And so I'm going to bring this up too, because I hear so many people say this. How could God allow all this to happen that's going on? How can God allow, a baby to have cancer? How can God allow, the war in the Ukraine? What do you say to those people that feel that there's a God there who's not intervening on someone's behalf or bequest? So I know it's a little.
Oh, I'd be happy to work with that, because
Yes.
there is no God. If many of us we cut our eye teeth on the idea that there is a God out there, and that God is not intervening or is creating something unlike what we desire. But if we just take the first part of that phrase, there is a God out there, and if we were to change our perspective so that we understand that there is a God in here, there is a light within each and every one of us. This light is the creative light, like a crystal, through which the source shines. And just like a crystal, which is a laser that can heal in surgery,
Yes.
as if we were all crystals where God's light would shine through us, and we could then shine that light onto the earth, we could create a different earth. And each individual contributes to the creation on the earth. And God gave us free will. So in our free will, and let's put it this way, in the insanity of our free will, we believed we were separate from each other and we had to go to war. In the insanity of our free will, we believed that there was not enough, and therefore we'd have to fight over resources. In the insanity of our free will, we believed that somebody was better and somebody was worse, and if we were the worst, we would be oppressed.
Yes. Yes.
But when we all give ourselves permission to have an individual, sustained experience of God's light as us, in us, through us, and as we exhibit that on the earth, we invite others to experience their own light. And it's almost like one candle lighting another until the whole earth is illuminated.
Yes.
And then it is not God outside of us allowing this to happen. It is the God within us creating something other than that.
Yes. And I hold that. I hear what you're saying. And my belief too is that we're living under that false impression or illusion that we're separate, and we're not. We are connected, and we're all interconnected. What affects one affects all.
Yes.
And, when I hear people saying that about, how can God allow this, that, or the other, I hold that God, the universe, spirit, whatever term it is that you want to use, is a loving spirit, is a loving presence.
Exactly.
And
it was never outside of us. The first time Spirit ever told me this, I lost some members. And it was in 1995 during the Oklahoma City bombings. And there was this picture, this little girl, I still remember her name all these years later. Her name was Bailey Ullman,
Mm.
and she appeared in the arms of the firefighter. She had one booty on, one booty off. She had this little thing around her head, and the firefighter was carrying her, and she was dead. And the firefighter was carrying her from the Oklahoma City building.
Mhm.
This young girl, Bailey Ullman. And people ask the question that you asked: how could a loving God allow this to happen? And Spirit gave a different perspective, and I lost some members about this.
Mm.
Spirit gave the perspective, perhaps she was a soul who knew of her infinite life, who volunteered to have a short detour on the earth in order to create a visual image of how destructive this consciousness of division could be, so that people could and when everyone saw her in her image, people could realize this is what destructive division looks like, and they could make another choice, so that collectively we could begin choosing a different consciousness. And that was a different perspective.
That was a new perspective at that
Yes,
time.
and
That
I
was-
lost some members on that one. But A Course in Miracles says, let me see this differently.
Mm.
Let me
And-
see this through the eyes of God. And from that perspective, that's the perspective that could make sense out of the senseless.
So wow, so well said. And I know we had not talked about going this route, but spirit appears the way it needs to appear.
Yeah.
And what I was going to say when I'm getting to with this, it is back to emotions. I was just in the US for 3 weeks back in May and June.
Mhm.
People were so, my goodness, stressed, so quick to anger. I was at a clinic just waiting, and it was Kaiser, and the gentleman started screaming, "What? I need a Kaiser card here. I need a Kaiser card." I'm thinking, well, you are at Kaiser. It's a medical facility. They ask for it. But what I'm getting to, that people are just angry, enraged, feelings of, I've heard this said from so many people, feeling of hopelessness, like there isn't anything that I can do. There's nowhere I can turn. So, and we're talking about this, about emotions. And my question was, how do we support our young people? And we can put all people together, not just, but the young people that are so filled with rage and hopelessness. How do you address that, or doing emotional release work with them?
Understand what is happening right now. What is happening right now is that there is so much light on the earth that it literally is triggering, pulling up and pulling out all of that, so that it can be replaced by light. And when you understand that that is what emotional release is all about, we all need to have a whole global primal scream, which means really accepting, this is where I am right now, this is what I'm feeling, this is where I'm hurt,
Yes.
and accepting and allowing that, God, I let you into this place that you might heal it and me. I release this to you, God, so that you could replace the feelings, the ideas, and the energies of my pain with the presence, the comfort, and the grace of your light. And that cathartic experience that releases old energy and creates the space for new energy is the mass catharsis that we're going through right now. And it is ultimately for the greatest good, for it moves our earth to a new dimension. And that's what I talk about in chapter 9 of my book. As chapter 9 in my book, The Soul of Prosperity, takes all of the reasons that we've not allowed ourselves prosperity and transforms them into, this is how we can allow our prosperity. So it is the pivotal chapter in our book, and it's emotional release. The thing that is blocking your prosperity, in essence, is grief that you've held on to that can be released and transformed. Anger that you've held on to that can be released and transformed. Rage, sadness, hopelessness that you've held on to that can be released and transformed. And when you release it and transform it, you create a blank slate upon which God can write God's story of your prosperity, where your ego has written its story of pain and suffering.
And getting into that feeling of the rage, of of whatever it, rage, sadness, those emotions are still there.
Yes.
They are they are to be experienced. It is part of the grieving
Yes.
process, the part of going through that. I
Yes.
just want to ask you, just back to when you talked about your traumatic event when you
Yes.
were 14 and not having had the opportunity at that time to really
Mhm.
resolve that anger and whatever feelings you had inside. How did you get through when you finally were able to say, okay, I'm going to
Uh-huh.
do it? What was your process? I'll put it that way. What was your process of moving through those painful emotions?
15 years later, when they manifested in a life that was outwardly perfect and inwardly hell, I started doing emotional release.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with a master teacher in New York who had worked with Eva Pierakos, author of the book The
Mm-hmm.
Pathwork of the Soul.
Yes, yes, yes. So,
And and I started working with emotional release to
mm,
heal the pain that I had carried around for, at that point, 15 years, if not 29. And I started working on myself. I used tools such as A Course in Miracles, my own individual prayers and meditation in a daily spiritual practice. And just like Michelangelo chipped away, chipped away, chipped away, chipped
yes,
away, chipped away, I chipped away at all the energies of pain, all the energies of rage, all the energies of anger, all the things I thought I was in terms of my ego, until my divine essence became or was revealed to me.
mm-hmm.
I thought I was this, I thought I was that, I thought I was this, I thought I was that. And all of a sudden I realized you're nothing but love, and the rest is just window
Ah,
dressing.
yes, yes. And that reminds me of Michelangelo, yeah, um, Michael, when he did the
Yes.
David, he said, "Oh, how did
Mhm.
you do this?" And he said, "Oh, he said I didn't do anything. It's like David was already in there. I just chiseled away at what was covering him." And
Yes.
so it sounds like that's exactly what you did.
Absolutely, and that's what we all do. We chip. I thought I was this, but really I'm holy. I thought I was that, but really I'm holy. This part of me felt guilty, but really I'm holy. This part of me felt undeserving, but really I'm holy. This part of me did not believe that something like that was available to someone like me, but really I am holy. And when you chip away at all those false ego ideas and all the pain of the false ego and all the illusions of the false ego, you get down to your divine and holy essence, which is the beloved child of God, fully deserving of all of God's grace. And you realize that God has an investment in your prosperity, and you say yes. Your prosperity is already there. Your task is to remove all the barriers to your prosperity so that it can be made manifest easily, effortlessly, joyfully, and immediately.
Wow, powerfully said, powerfully said. And there's a couple of things you said there that I really appreciate hearing. That you were able to reach out for help. That you were able to reach out for help to start your own self discovery and healing. So um, I think it's Bell Hooks that says we can't heal in isolation. We can't
Yes.
heal in isolation. And for you to reach out and then do, oh, let me ask you this. Now, this is just between you and I, right?
Okay. Okay. Just between you, me, and the world.
That's it. Yes. Do you feel that you need a spiritual practice to move through?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely. Now, that term can be very broad because for some people, a spiritual practice is walking in the woods.
exactly. Yes.
Yes. For some people, a spiritual practice is going to the gym and working on the elliptical.
Mm-hmm.
For some people, a spiritual practice is sitting in a chair in meditation. What the thing that is operative for emotional release and for growth and for dealing with grief is creating a safe space
Yes.
where
Yes.
all of your feelings are valid, where your feelings can be observed, embraced, validated, released, and transformed. And that's why I love your idea of a grief spa,
Oh, yes. Oh,
because
yes.
it's that safe space.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Um, I was just wondering when you say having that spiritual practice, I was just wondering, how would you encourage someone that had not even given that a thought? What would your encouragement be along those lines?
Move. And what I mean by that is think about what is bothering you and do some sort of physical movement. And as you think about what is bothering you and you do some physical movement, what will happen is you will begin a flow of energy that automatically starts triggering you to release. And the
Mm-hmm.
reason that I say move is because most people have blockages to meditation where they sit there and they say, I can't meditate. Their mind starts wandering, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
Move,
Right.
move, walk, swim, go to the gym, move. Think about what is bothering you, what is on your mind. And what happens is what is on your mind moves through your body and your energy and then is expressed through your movement.
There's that mind-body connection that we
Yes.
sometimes forget
Yes.
is real. That is, and when you talk about movement, oh, another is art. Art,
Yes.
expressing that, letting the mind just, it's I call it giving the mind a little vacation. It's like, okay,
Yes.
go over there and rest. I'm just going to create. And whatever it is that you do, now they have mandalas that you can color.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
I am a soul collage, a facilitator. And
Mm.
the idea is that in soul collage is that
Mhm.
images speak
Mhm.
to us in ways that words
Yes.
kind of get in the way. But to look
Yes.
at, say, a picture of a bird, it's like, wow,
Mhm.
that's like freedom, that's lightness, that's like a
Mhm.
lightness of spirit. And just let images. So I thank you for reminding us that the
Yes.
body and the mind are
Because
definitely
what
together.
exactly, because what you're doing is you're moving energy, you're channeling energy through you. All the stuff that is within you, you are expressing it.
Yeah.
Sometimes some people do automatic writing or soul writing as well, or journaling.
Mhm.
All you're doing is you're taking that which is within you, you're bringing it to the surface, and you're expressing it, pressing it out. X from you, press to express. And when you move it out, you create a void.
Mhm.
And as you know, nature abhors a vacuum. So
Oh,
what yeah.
yeah.
So what flows in? Your intention for healing, your intention for light, your intention for grace, your intention for a deeper divine connection when the ego and its grievances have been released, so that there is more room within you for the divine.
Wow. That, yeah, nature does not like a void. Something has to fill that space. Something has to fill that space. Oh, wow, Reverend Webb. Well, I'm going to just take a little break and we'll come back and tie this all up and wrap it up. And
Yes.
it's so honored to have you here. So we'll take a little break and come right back.
Wonderful.
New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Hello, that was quick. We're back, and we're back with Reverend Webb from the new program that he has on New Thought Media Network, and that is the Miracle of Prosperity. And he is with us on Sundays at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. So, Reverend Webb, I want to ask you, and I just want to ask if you have some words that you'd like to close with. But here's what I do want to ask you: are you familiar with first responders?
Yes.
First responders, they're on the scene when an accident or anything tragic, and they are just the lifeline. They're that They're that part that you can make it or you cannot. They're the ones that really save lives. So here's what I wanted to ask you. I feel that spiritual leaders are first responders for our emotional status. Would you like to speak to that? How do you hold that when you hear I'm calling you a first responder for our
Yes.
for our
Yes.
emotional salvation, our emotional, if you want to call it resuscitation,
Yes.
if,
Yes.
if that's needed. So how do you hold that? How do you hold
Yes. Any first responder has had extensive training and they automatically go into life-saving mode, right?
Yes, yes, I know. Yes.
Well, a spiritual, that's right, you're a nurse.
I'm
You're
a
a
registered,
professional nurse.
I'm
Yes, a registered
registered.
nurse.
You
So, as spiritual first responders, we have had extensive training and we automatically go into life-saving mode. An aspect of our life-saving mode is moving ourselves, our fears, our biases, or anything that we've been working through out of the way. And that process is the process of purification that I talked about, so that the light of God, the inspiration of God, the wisdom of God, the grace of God, the love of God, the peace of God can flow through us effortlessly without obstruction. And it can go to wherever it is needed, to the heart of the heartbroken who is sitting across from us, to the mind of the mind that has been confused, that is sitting across from us, to the energy of the person who is discombobulated that is sitting across from us. So our task is to move our stuff out of the way through our daily spiritual practice so the purest essence of God can come through in whatever form and in whatever way it is needed for the person who is sitting across from us. And that's our
yes,
task as spiritual first responder. Does that
yes.
make any sense?
Oh, it does. It sounds just like the analogy I think we talked about, or you talked about on our time together, about being on the airplane, and when the oxygen mask comes down, put yours on first so that you can then help others. So yes, I so appreciate what you do. I so appreciate the gift that you're bringing to the world, and that you're bringing here on New Thought Media. I just want to ask, was there any words that you wanted to close with, or any other share that you wanted us to be a part of?
Yes. What I'd like to say, just to tie this up in a nice little blue box with a white bow.
A pink bow.
Okay. The way I want to tie this up is that whatever you're going through, grief, the loss that triggers grief, anger, rage, or any other emotion unlike love, that is not something to be run away from. It is not something to be judged. It is a tool to be used for your
Yeah.
healing, for your progression, for this is what blocks your prosperity. When
Mhm.
you work with, heal, or transform that which comes up that is unlike love, you create the void for love to flow through more easily and effortlessly. And this love flows through and can take all the forms of prosperity. This love that you allow to come through as the blockage is released can take the form of family prosperity, where your family relationships are supportive. This love that comes through when the blockages are released can take the form of professional prosperity, where you are professionally fulfilled. It
Mhm.
can come through and take the form of relationship prosperity, where your relationships can be loving, supportive, uplifting, and a source of joy.
Mhm.
And it can take the form of physical prosperity in the form of physical fulfillment and
Yes.
enough resources of all types, including financial resources, that your life becomes effortless and without struggle. And this
Mm.
is what prosperity is all about. And one of the keys to this prosperity is healing, transforming, acknowledging, and using grief as a tool.
Yes. Yes. Grief, as I go back to saying, is transformative. It is transformative. You move through grief, as you said, you open yourself. You
Yes.
open yourself to so much more prosperity,
Yes.
abundance, gratitude, but just opening that happens when you move through grief. That is a gift. It's a true gift. I wanted you, Reverend Webb, to share with us any workshops or classes that you have. You're definitely a man that I feel can make a difference, that can make a difference here on this planet at this time. So are you offering workshops or classes that you'd like to share with us?
Actually, I am. I just started last week, so you can still get in relatively on the ground floor for an 8-week summer prosperity intensive.
Mm.
And it's 8 weeks. It's on Mondays and Thursdays, but it's on Zoom. So if you are unable to participate in person at real time, you can still get the recordings, and it's just as intense, just as informative, and just as uplifting if you get the recordings.
Mm-hmm.
And on Monday nights, we do a Spirit Speaks More on prosperity, because the veil is being lifted, literally being ripped away right now. And so Spirit has so much more to teach us about how to develop a prosperity consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And then on Thursday nights, it's the practicum. What do we do with this? Where we do exercises, coaching, discussion, healing, so that we can all take the lessons that Spirit is teaching us on how to open to prosperity and apply them to our lives in practical ways to open to the prosperity that Spirit has for us.
Yes.
So it's an 8-week prosperity intensive. And
Mm.
you can see more about it on my website, and you can contact me if it is something that is of interest to you.
Mm.
But we
Oh,
still have virtual slots.
thank you. Thank you, Reverend Webb. You have been a gift. You've been a gift to your Doula for Grief and a gift to our audience. And I just thank you so, so much. And please continue. Please continue. What you are speaking about when you talk about the veil is being lifted, we are each one individually starting to awaken. And slowly and surely, one by one, this change is happening. This change is happening. And just being with you on the program today, I am totally encouraged and inspired. So I thank you so much. It looks like we have another comment. Oh, Veronica Kaiser had left a message. So thank you, Veronica. I miss you. And Cheryl says, thank you both again for this conversation. And yes, so get Reverend Webb's book. Joe, can you put that up again? The Keys to the Soul of Prosperity. So look for his book, The Soul of Prosperity. And I'm getting it. So thank you so, so much, Reverend Webb. And I just want to take a moment to thank New Thought Media Network for having this platform that allows for truly faith-encouraging, inspirational programming and allowing for some rich dialogue. And so make a donation, make a contribution. It's newthoughtmedianetwork.org. Coming up today, later today, the Circle of Peace with Gina Gupta is coming up at 4 Mountain Time. Evening prayers at 8:15 Mountain Time. And we at New Thought Media love to pray with you. So you can send your prayers via email, prayers@ntmedia.org. That's prayer@ntmedia.org. So again, what a wonderful guest that we've had. And the hour goes by so fast when you're talking to fascinating minds. And Reverend Webb definitely is a man that has a vision, and it's truly fascinating to speak with. And it's been my honor and pleasure. So thank you. And I will see everyone next week, next Monday. Thank you.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network. Come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.